Hello and welcome to Fresh Face Comics, the comic book podcast where a lifelong comic book reader guides his friend through the world of comics for the first time. My name is Joey Morgan, the aforementioned lifelong reader. With me as always is Jacob Licklider, the aforementioned newbie.
What you're gonna do, Joey, is you're gonna PayPal and you're gonna wire tap me all of your money
I don't
because
think
I
so.
am. Damn it! I thought it would work.
No, you need the silky Scottish tones of David Tennant to do this, because today we're talking about Jessica Jones season 1 at long last, after 2 years, finally continuing our coverage of the Marvel Netflix Defenders saga from the MCU. What the fuck, Jacob? Why did this take so long? Explain to the people.
Um.
they wish to know.
Uh. Well, in between, as it was part of it was Justice League taking so long because
And why
okay.
did Justice League take so long, Jacob?
Well, that was 'cause I was lazy.
That's true. You are a
I
lazy
was lazy
bugger.
as fuck. But Jessica Jones, we would have had this out sooner if I didn't get sick last minute.
Yeah, but that was
Because
also only a week delay, let alone like the months beforehand it took you to watch 13 episodes of a TV show.
this is true. It's
All that said, welcome to finally a bonus episode, another bonus episode of Fresh Face Comics. I'm very excited to be talking about this today. Non-spoiler section first, I guess. Jacob, what is Jessica Jones
well,
season 1 about?
so well, okay. So I was going to bring it over to you because I know you have read some of the comics that this
Alias. Yeah,
is
yeah.
Alias.
I have read Alias. I've read all the original Bendis run. Yeah, it's kind of funny actually. Season 1 adapts the final arc of Alias, which is really
Oh,
weird.
that is an. I mean,
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, obviously, Jessica's backstory had been alluded to many a time before that in the comics. But yeah, the whole Kilgrave Purple Man stuff only happens in the final arc of Alias. But
I now want to read this because I'm curious to see what happens beforehand.
it most definitely is on the schedule somewhere. So
It,
trust me,
it
we
is
will be
most
reading it.
definitely on the
It,
schedule
it, it
somewhere.
is. It's one of my favorite Marvel runs. I really love Alias. It's a fantastic comic. I love Jessica Jones as a character. I'll say the reason that a lot of Alias didn't get adapted into the show is because it's a Brian Michael Bendis book, and Brian Michael Bendis does not know how to write a solo Marvel comic. It like every single thing he writes about a solo Marvel character has to feature about like 5 or 6 other characters per arc. So like Captain America shows up in the first Alias arc. It's really fucking weird.
That that is fascinating.
Yeah. So needless to say, there's not a lot of stuff that you can actually adapt without cutting out a lot of those big key characters. But you get an arc like the Purple Man arc from the end of Alias, and you have a really solid season of TV. Arguably one of the very best things to come out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like a lot of the
It's
Defenders saga, I would say. But this season
this is
especially.
this is going to sound so weird, but it's a season of television that feels like a season of television, which shouldn't be difficult to say, but it's so weird to go back and now watch a serialized piece of television that I could see having aired on like primetime TV over the course of 13 weeks. Like
Totally, totally.
it,
I mean,
it didn't because
that was sort of how it was still being made. You know, these were 13 episode seasons. This came out pretty early in the Netflix era of streaming shows. Like this is 2015. Netflix original TV shows were still kind of taking off. What was the first one? What was it? Orange Is the New Black? I want to say that
Orange is the New Black might have been the first. At least that was probably like the earliest
at least the
really
first one that really
big
took
one.
off. That was 2013. So yeah, this is still very early. You know, Netflix is doing original shows and really great prestige format TV shows. And so when the Marvel Cinematic Universe decided to sort of spread out and do other things, Netflix was one of the first companies they went to. And so we had the Defender saga, which we talked about Daredevil season 1 before. But in continuing this, this came out the same year as Daredevil season 1. So it wasn't just that they went to Netflix and tried out one project. They announced a whole slate of projects and its own sort of like mini MCU phase, instead of Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Iron Fist, all leading up to this big team up called the Defenders. And then there was also a spinoff called the Punisher, because why the fuck not? John Bernthal's amazing. But yeah, it creates this. But you're right. Like it is it is still just a TV show. It was still being made as regular TV. Because this is also the same time that Marvel started doing Agents of Shield, which was an actual regular primetime TV
It
show.
was a
Um,
primetime ABC TV show with like 20 plus episode seasons.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, this made me kind of miss TV in a way. Like I'm like I I don't dislike the Prestige 8 to 10 episode miniseries format, but I think some stories work better like this. And Jessica Jones, well, okay. I think we do need to take a pause, do a quick content warning. Season 1 of Jessica Jones includes topics of sexual assault, rape, and quite a lot of other things. So viewer discretion is advised.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, totally.
like this is heavier than Daredevil season 1 was.
Most definitely.
Uh,
I think this is. I mean, obviously the Marvel Netflix shows were more adult oriented in general, but I think this is definitely the most mature that the franchise ever got, and I think still has ever gotten in all of the MCU. So
yeah, and I don't think the MCU is going to go this dark again.
no, no. I'll say. Echo is a step in the right direction. As far as getting back to what these shows were doing. But who knows where they're going with that. But
They've also just made so many MCU shows that like
oh god, yeah,
I you
yeah.
don't I forgot Echo was a thing.
Echo was great. Echo was just a genuinely great continuation of the Defender saga, and I want a million more. So, yeah, and also I think of what I've seen of the leaked Daredevil Born Again footage, it looks like it's mostly in line with what the show is doing. I can only hope. Fingers crossed, etc., etc. But yeah, sort of keeping on topic here. So you had no experience with Jessica Jones as a character before this. What did I mean? I guess what did you know about her going in?
Well, okay, so I will say I had watched on original release at least the first 2 episodes,
Mhm.
uh, and then I just stopped. I don't know why. So I knew she was a superhero. I know she knew she had super strength. That was about it. And I knew about the Purple Man because it, that's kind of the
Well,
one thing people
yeah,
know about this show.
yeah, and
Uh,
I think David Tennant was sort of a big draw for you as a Doctor Who fan, of course, right?
yes, definitely. Especially when this came out and what this came out in what
2015.
yeah 2015. So late 2015. So yeah, David Tennant's a big draw. Um, though it's so funny that when watching this, I initially on nearly a decade ago when it first came out, um, I bet there was barely any David Tennant in it, and I don't turned me off. I think it was just more the heavy tone turned me
Gotcha,
off because it's
gotcha,
heavy.
gotcha.
This
Mhm,
is heavy stuff, really good stuff, but quite heavy, quite mature. It's not really a superhero story, which is nice.
mhm. But that's one of the
Like,
things that also like one of the big things it did take from the Alias comic is that it's Jessica Jones was an original character to Alias, but Bendis sort of wrote her with this big backstory of having previously been a superhero, and this is her life now, which is very much what this show does. It separates itself from that superhero lifestyle by alluding to this larger life around her, and Jessica Jones just trying her best to live a normal life in the middle of it all.
um, though I think in the show it feels more like we have what the phase of Marvel films is doing, like just out of frame in a way.
Mhm.
But in
Well,
like
yeah, because I think because a lot of these like early Defenders shows started like mostly allude to like the fallout of the first Avengers movie and like the destruction that caused in New York City and how normal people are trying to survive and all this. That's a big plot point in Daredevil season 1. So yeah, so like there have always been like allusions to that larger Marvel Cinematic Universe out there, but it doesn't stop these stories from being self-contained, I think.
what helps is you could take this. This doesn't even have to be a Marvel show. Like
Mhm.
there there aren't many there aren't many overt references. There's a couple of crossover characters, um, or to mainly to Daredevil season one is the big crossover. Even
Mhm.
then, not really.
Yeah, there's like one character that goes, oh no, sorry, no, I'm thinking it's Daredevil season 2. There's a character from the end of Jessica Jones season 1 that goes over to Daredevil season 2. Are there any other big crossovers? I think that's for the most. Oh, sorry, Claire. Of course, Claire is here as
Yeah,
well. Um,
there is exactly one, and
there's
it's
one, yeah, and it's
her
only
role
kind of.
could easily have been taken by just another character.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Jessica Jones wisely, I think, stays the most separated from the Defenders saga early on, and even I think seasons 2 and 3, her show very much remains her own, and I'm not sure why that is, but I'm glad that that is.
I mean,
um,
for season one, it's clearly because this is a personal story of one woman's trauma and trying to move past it
mhm.
in
I mean,
a world that
the biggest like
will not
larger
let her.
yeah, the biggest larger Defenders thing this show does is include Luke Cage as a character in here to set him up. But even then, he's strictly being used in the context of a supporting character to Jessica Jones, not we're setting up the Luke Cage show. Because the story of like Luke, how Luke got his powers stays entirely out of this. That is reserved for his show. The only backstory of Luke Cage you get is how he is related to Jessica Jones as a character, and how she sort of knows him already. More on that in spoilers, of course.
So what's so fascinating is almost almost exclusively could have been made just from Jessica's perspective
Mhm.
until until some stuff in the back half um, of the season where we get some stuff with David Tennant as the Purple Man.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but even then, a lot of that could possibly even have been edited around to make it just Jessica.
yeah,
You know,
totally.
this is her
Um,
story. I think it's also one where I think the creative team behind the show clearly knows what they're doing.
oh, totally.
This season and the show itself was uh, created by Melissa Rosenberg,
Mhm.
who has a not insignificant amount of television credits to her name, as well as some very some experience. We'll say experience in franchise work.
Mhm.
Mainly as the writer of all of the Twilight films, which
Legend that she is.
uh,
um, but
she
important.
knows that. She knows how to tell a story.
Yeah, yeah.
Twilight is not good. I'm not going to blame. There's really only one person to blame for Twilight not being good, and it's not actually any of the people who made those films.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
original writer.
yeah. But I think also, bringing up Melissa Rosenberg, I think that's a great point. Is that like a lot of these episodes, not all of them, of course, but a lot of these episodes are written by women, and being a show explicitly about Jessica Jones's trauma and her experiences as a woman, are I think that's just a really smart choice. Obviously, like I said, not all of the writing staff is female, but and obviously, I guess we're not ones to talk, you and me talking about this show, but I think that is just an important point that in executing this show, that these are very deliberate choices being made behind the scenes. So,
I mean, it's the same with a decent chunk of the directors are women.
oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
I I think it's more than 50% of the episodes are directed by women.
I think
Um,
so.
if not, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Uh, at least in the first season. I don't know about the other two seasons because I have not seen them.
Well,
Um,
Rosenberg stays on as a writer for the other seasons.
oh, good,
Um,
because
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah,
she clearly knows how
she
to.
always, yeah, she always writes the season opener and the season closer. So
Well, because she's the showrunner, so she's the one guiding the hand.
Yeah, yeah. All that said, I think we should get to some Twitter questions.
We should. We
We
should.
should. Starting off with Discord questions, actually, of course. First off, from our friend Andrew, friend of the podcast, says, "Does seeing David Tennant playing a sicko feel off after so many years of watching Doctor Who?" Not really. I think I experienced this, for me at least. I experienced this pretty early on in being familiar with his career. So I kind of like was aware of Tennant as a more versatile actor when I first saw this already. So yeah, I don't know about you.
I mean, I have the hot take that I like David Tennant. I usually find myself liking David Tennant more when he's not in Doctor Who.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course, he's a wonderful performer in Doctor Who. But yeah, and I love so many of his other roles. He's a wonderful actor.
it's like let the man have range. Let him.
Because he does have range. He has so much fucking range.
He's at best when he gets to be at least a little bit unhinged. At
Yeah,
least,
yeah.
I'd argue this wasn't the first role where he was unhinged. That was his role in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, where he has
he
so
is
little
absolutely
material
insane
to
in
work
that.
with.
He makes the most of it.
Yes.
Andrew also asks if you can give any other Marvel property an adult-oriented TV show, which would it be? I'm assuming this is excluding the rest of the Defenders shows. I'm not sure. I mean, I know Moon Knight was touted as a this is a more adult Marvel show. Do it even more. Give me more. I want to say Blade, but also we have Blade. Blade is obviously reserved for movies, of course, but I would love to see a Blade TV show. I think that would be cool as
Are you
hell.
sure Blade is reserved for movies? Are we sure there's a Blade movie coming
I
out?
That's true. That's true. But we have a whole trilogy, even if we're not counting MCU things. So, but yeah, no, I think I think a lot of those characters, I think I could see.
Do you know what? X-Men. I think X-Men would really excel.
I suppose. I
Like,
also think. See, here's the thing, though. I think also when I think of like peak X Men, I think of like I think of like Claremont X Men, which still managed to be mature in almost like a Batman the Animated Series type way. Like it managed to be mature while still being available for all ages. So I don't think X Men necessarily needs to be. There are certain characters in the X Men that I prefer seeing in more adult oriented things. Of course, things like Logan and Deadpool exist, which are amazing films and are perfect for tones and styles for those characters. But yeah, I think X Men as a whole, I could see as just still being all ages.
I mean, it is a little tricky because comics are largely sold to children.
Yeah, yeah,
Or they're supposed to be.
yeah.
Get them back in the grocery stores, and they might be.
Yep. We are children, Jacob. It's okay. Next up on Discord from our friend Marcus, friend of the podcast, says one of the things I really like about Jessica Jones, at least the first season, is the small scale of it. The stakes of the MCU always tend to be so big: fate of the world, fate of the universe, fate of the multiverse, etc. But with Jessica Jones season 1, it's just one person versus another person, and anyone unfortunate enough to get in the middle of their fight. Yeah, totally true. I actually have a note on that before Marcus even sent that in about like how this story, especially at the start of this story, begins so small and continues to spiral, but still remains very personal, which I think is incredibly smart. And also just another reason why I love the Defenders saga as a whole, because I think they are like street level, small scale stories, and they get fairly big by Defenders time. But of course, that I think by then it's earned its larger scale. But no, I agree. Yeah, it totally is that just this great sort of like personal fight between these two. It's wonderful.
It's also, I mean, it probably helps that there isn't as much interference from Disney. Like,
oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can tell that like Netflix was kind of given free reign to do a lot more with these shows, and as much as they, I guess, came to regret that decision later on when they just started canceling them and tried to not acknowledge their existence and decanonize them. I'm glad that has since been rolled back.
you see, that was because Disney realized, holy shit, the streaming game actually makes money.
Yeah, and
So,
so they didn't want anyone else putting in on that. But yeah,
too late. They had already. Well, ownership for a certain amount of time to all of these shows.
Yep. Which had already by that point blown out of the water almost everything the rest of the MCU had ever done. So, maybe they were jealous. Let's see. Next up from Twitter, our friend English Giraffe at English_Giraffe says, even without the success of season 1, the whole show was great. Seasons 2 and 3 are incredibly strong, although the former kind of borders on grimdark for me. When it comes to perfect comic book casting, Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones is pretty high up there for me. I agree. Yeah, I like the whole show. Obviously, season 1 is a high point, but no, the whole show is great. And yeah, Kristen Ritter is just perfect casting. I adore her.
I mean, she's probably the reason this thing works, really, if we're going to be honest.
I mean, there are so many things working in favor of this show, but yeah, she's definitely.
Yeah, I mean, she's the one that's laying the foundation, though, in her performance. Like, if it was someone else, it very likely would not have worked at all.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, because it is just amazing casting. I think that's also the casting of the whole Defenders saga. Kristen Ritter, Mike Coulter, Charlie Cox, John Bernthal, maybe to a degree. Oh god, what's his name? The dude that plays Danny.
Finn Jones.
Finn Jones, that's his name. Oh man, I feel really bad that I couldn't remember his name. To a certain degree, though, he's great casting. Although I might have been able to find something better, but it's okay. See, next from our friend Zach Jordan at ZachR1993998. Sorry, 1998. I could have just said that. I don't know. I'm stupid. Zach says, got two actors here that later went on to star in The Boys: Erin Moriarty as Hope Schlottman and Starlight, as well as Colby Minifie as Robin and Ashley. Very true, very true. And yeah, both those actresses are fantastic. We'll talk about them more. What's up?
What's lovely is I have not seen The Boys.
You have not seen The Boys, like a fool you are, Jacob.
Look, listen, look. Maybe in the future we will do a bonus episode on The Boys.
That would be fun as hell. Oh my god.
I would love to get my brother in on it because I think he actually really quite likes The Boys.
That would be wonderful.
But also, it's Garth Ennis, so
yes, hell yeah, it is. It's heavily adapted Garth Ennis. But it does still very much carry that Garth Ennis energy. Garth energy. Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis G. Haha, there we go.
I still don't like that. No.
Zach also says, might be jumping ahead, but do you believe the show peaked here? Obviously, Jacob can't speak on this, but I do think this is the peak of the show, but not because seasons 2 and 3 are bad. More just season 1 is just so phenomenal.
I mean, this is going to be difficult to top. Like,
yeah, it is, and I think most would agree that nothing else in the show really does top it, but I think also for that reason, seasons 2 and 3 are kind of weirdly hated on sometimes, which I think is incredibly harsh for two very great seasons of the show, especially season 3, which was the last season to come out of the Defenders saga, and is not just a great ending for the show as a whole, but as for the Defenders saga. It's a really nice sort of bookend for it.
I mean, this is oddly enough, despite being a TV show, this feels like it has a beginning, middle, and an ending. Like, I can see where we go from here, but like I can also see this being its own one season thing and being completely satisfied.
Yeah, it's a thing we'll have to come back to when maybe in a million years when you eventually watch seasons 2 and 3. But yeah, also our friend Jamie at Jamie_season7 says I should really get around to watching season 3. I agree. I probably should have saved my last rant from the end of that last question for this, but yeah, it's a great season. I really love season 3. So yeah, it's lovely. Next up from our friend Kian at Kian the Quark says, peak MCU for being honest. We being me and the evil David Tennant in my brain. No, I mean, yeah, I think I agree. I think the Defender saga as a whole is just the best the MCU has ever gotten, and I don't think it will ever get back to this point in time, but I'm fine. To be fair, also, it's like, what, 11, 12, 13, somewhere around there, seasons of TV. I'm pretty satisfied with what we got. So
there's a lot of it's a lot of television.
Yeah, a lot of really, really fucking good comic book television.
I want to say what is mostly regarded as good.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's some debate as to Iron Fist.
I was gonna say people say Iron Fist isn't great.
See,
Um,
season one is weird. I do really like Iron Fist season two though. But and also I know there's some people that don't like Defenders, but I think Defenders is really solid. Defenders is basically just a Daredevil season 2.5. It's it's weird. Yeah. Let's see, and then lastly from Kian, of course, continuing the trend,
why
Kilgrave
did he have to do the bit?
Kilgrave question mark with a picture of the 10th Doctor as played by David Tennant.
David Tennant.
And I just sat there and I laughed. All right. Who man? Nearly half-hour non-spoiler section. Jacob, I think it's time we
Yeah,
move on
let's
to
talk about
spoilers.
spoilers.
Let's talk about spoilers. Consider this your official spoiler warning for Jessica Jones season 1. We're going to be talking about it in a sort of loosey-goosey fashion, though I do have some notes here to sort of go off of. I think we should talk about characters, though, first, because I love talking about the characters of this show. We did sort of briefly talk about Kristen Ritter already, but I mean, a larger discussion on Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones?
Kristen Ritter is a masterclass in, I want to say, in range. Because before this, she was mostly known for like sitcoms. Um, like
Also for Breaking Bad, which she is excellent on. Yeah, I don't know, just a fantastic character in Breaking Bad. But
as an actress, really good, really understands the noir vibe of the show.
mhm.
Uh,
She turns in a really understated performance that is able to become elevated so quickly. But only when just right. I think. I think she just perfectly understands when to flip that switch. Obviously, in scenes mostly involving Kilgrave, but no, I really love how she plays the sort of blasé nature of Jessica throughout the season. Um,
I mean, so much of it is Jessica Jones as a character has a just a wall up to the entire almost through the entire thing
mhm.
until one of the final scenes of the season.
Yeah,
Like
I mean, importantly, she doesn't have like any strong connections with anyone in the show other than Trish, I would say. Everyone else she can be friendly with, but anyone else that she's close to, she sort of keeps at arm's length, like Luke, like Malcolm, Jerry, of course.
manipulates them almost as much as Kilgrave manipulates people.
Yeah, which makes for this really great parallel. And I don't think Jessica ever really realizes what she does to people as well, and where she kind of got it from. Um, Really, really good, really smart stuff. Um,
I
yeah.
mean, I think some of that is also just flawed character.
Oh yeah,
Um,
deeply flawed character. Oh my god, I love her. Um, yeah.
um, especially with uh, you know, her the entire show is a trap for Jessica. Like
Mhm.
it's this beautifully designed trap that you hope you can get. We want to see Jessica get out of it, and it has these peaks and valleys where it's like maybe she's out. Nope, she is pulled right back in, and it looks like
Mhm.
she's pulled even further. But ooh, she might be out. No, she's not. And then it really helps make it work, especially with the way the final episode plays out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Because the whole time, I mean, like she plays the character often as being well aware of Kilgrave's nature and being aware of like what he has planned, and finds ways to like get ahead of him. And there's one in particular that's spread across 2 episodes where like she actually is sort of winning, if you will. But no, it for the most part, like it is being a comic book show. It's not a very action heavy show. It is this mind game being played back and forth between Jessica and Kilgrave, and it's wonderful to watch. I have him at the bottom of my character notes, but should we just talk about Kilgrave now? Because
I mean, we've got to talk about David Tennant,
it's going to be
okay?
kind of impossible to talk about a lot of these characters without talking about Kilgrave's relationship to them, of course. David fucking Tennant. Oh my god, he is unbelievable. Um, his first scene especially, I think is so striking. You don't even see him in full, and it is just the scene where he just walks into a house, orders a family to do everything for him immediately, hides these kids in a closet, gets the parents of the house to like serve him. You just hear his voice, and it is the first time he's ever on screen, and it immediately tells you who the character is. Tennant comes into the show with such a presence, that perfectly sets the tone for what his character is going to be, which is not just this perfect mastermind villain, as we eventually find out.
He
Um,
is a petulant child who has
he
godlike
is.
powers.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
like
He.
there's a lot that the show has to say about how Kilgrave as our villain is representative of who society lets slip through the cracks. Like, because there's a moment where then you get focus on Kilgrave's backstory, Kilgrave's parents, who are major characters in the season,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
which
And
kind of threw me for a
horrible
loop.
people. Horrible people. You can see where he gets it
Awful.
from.
You can see exactly where this cyclical nature of abuse comes from.
Yeah.
Uh, played wonderfully uh, by Lisa Emery and Michael Cybery.
Mhm.
And Kilgrave as a character just escalates to get what he wants. And I'm honestly surprised in a lot of ways, they went as far as they did. Tennant is clearly eating up every minute of screen time. Uh,
Mhm.
like, it, and like Christian Ritter's performance as Jessica, it's equally as closed off of a performance. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think Kilgrave is obviously like at his most fascinating to watch when he is when he's being this amazing horrible mastermind that he is, but I think at his most interesting and compelling to watch when he is at his lowest. I think Sinbin is a fantastic episode of the show, for being essentially this almost Silence of the Lambs like glass case between Kilgrave and Jessica Jones, and Kilgrave for at once being at a disadvantage, and this is of course where we find a lot of his backstory of what his parents did to him. And I really love it for that. It is this perfect character examination, and it leads brilliantly into 1,000 cuts, which is another of my absolute favorites from the season. I also just actually, while I mention it, I also love the naming scheme of the titles of this show, the AKA then the actual title of the episode. Just I don't know, I like that. I appreciate that a lot. Um,
and it was going to be called AKA Jessica Jones, and then they, for whatever reason, changed it just to Jessica Jones. Um,
yeah, I mean, I'm okay
I
with it. I don't mind it
like
either way.
obviously
Realistically, I would rather it be called Alias, but obviously there is another fairly well-known show called Alias out there that is also on Disney Plus, actually. um,
created by J.J. Abrams.
yeah,
Um,
so
so
I don't think they could really do that, unfortunately. But calling it Jessica Jones is fine, obviously. And actually, while we're talking on the title and the sort of aesthetic of the show, I want to talk about the title cards briefly and the sort of posters and everything, which are all done by comic book artist David Mack. Wonderful, wonderful style of the show. Who did a lot of the covers for Alias as well, the comic. Perfectly sort of sets the tone for what the show is like, and I think it's got such a great theme tune. I don't know, I just love the title sequence so much. It's really, really
the
good.
oh God, I really should have looked up who composed the theme.
I have
Oh, Sean Callery. Sean Callery did all the music for the show. It is this fascinating little light jazz theme.
mhm. It's a little noir detective Bob.
Yeah, but it's this musically, it's this lovely little escalation up the scale through just as our chord progression goes on that I fits the vibe of this season to a T. Like
Oh
as
yeah.
everything is escalating, and we are
Mhm.
slowly building and building until the tension can only release at the end, and things fall apart.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's such a great theme. Oh, beautiful stuff. Um, I love it so much. Let's move on to another character though. Actually, I'll ask you. Who do you want to do next?
well, let's do the disaster lesbians.
Ah, yes, Jerry Hogarth, as played with the wonderful Carrie Ann Moss.
So,
This is of course a gender bent character of Jaren
oh
Hogarth,
really?
and
I didn't realize that.
we've read Jaren Hogarth in Daredevil before, actually, on the podcast.
Okay, I didn't
Uh,
make that connection.
I think I told you it on the podcast.
Did you?
I'm pretty sure I did. This is also like over a year ago now at
It's
this
over
point.
a year
So
ago. Um,
so, but yeah, he was in the one with Luke Cage and Iron Fist because he's their lawyer. So
right, right.
yep.
That. Well, I mean, okay. So this is probably gonna make me a bad sci-fi fan. I've never actually seen The Matrix. Um,
No, Jacob, you can't say that publicly.
well, tough shit. I haven't seen The Matrix, which is especially funny because it's one of the few DVD trilogies my dad owns. So I
He's got
have
the
no
DVD
excuse.
trilogy. I love it. Yeah, okay. So, did you know Carrie Ann Moss from anything else?
I'm not sure. Um, I have to have seen her in something, like,
I'm sure.
somewhere, um, or heard her in something, or just been generally aware of who Carrie Ann Moss is.
Mhm. I mean,
Uh,
when you're the one of the leads in the Matrix, I think your cultural icon status immediately skyrockets. So yeah, no, yeah, I think Carrie Ann Moss is just one of those people that people know, and she's wonderful in this. Such a great casting for this show, for what essentially ends up becoming an original character because Jerry Hogarth is nothing like Jaren Hogarth of the comics, and not just because of the gender bend. She's just a great character on her own. She's also a lawyer, like the Jaren of the comics, but that's about where the similarities end. She's Jessica's lawyer, and she is a disaster of a woman. I love her so much. um, there's this wonderful, like many characters, like actually literally every character we've talked about so far. There's this wonderful closed off nature to Carrie Ann's performance. In that, like, yeah, she does not let anyone into her life, and you can see how deeply uncomfortable she is with Jessica and very few others being aware of her life. This is a character going through a divorce right now. She is not doing okay, and
a divorce that is entirely her fault. Like,
yes,
like I hate to say it, Jerry Hogarth got everything that was coming to her.
a little bit, a little bit.
Like it, it is so fascinating because, uh, like, a plot point is the divorce is happening because she was having an affair, and like any affair, the other woman is just ready to marry her. Um,
Mhm.
but the ex, poor God, poor Wendy, Wendy didn't deserve.
Oh god, no, she did not deserve that. Speaking of 1000 cuts, which I just mentioned in our last character discussion, what an episode that is for them. But like, yeah, it is all Jerry's fault, and you're right, she does deserve everything coming to her, except for the fact that it's not a spoiler to say. Would you believe she's in every season?
Would partially because you have Carrie Ann
You
Moss.
have
Like
Carrie Ann Moss
you're,
being amazing.
it's like we need her to cause problems because she is single-handedly one of the reasons that this season is 13 episodes long.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. She is exclusively looking out for herself. Like she'll do favors for other people, but only if it helps her. And I think it makes her such a great necessary evil throughout the show almost. Um, like people need her for things. They need her for things. Mostly, of course, in the protection slash endangerment of Hope Schlotman, who we'll talk about later. Yeah, I love her character. I absolutely adore her character. Yeah, wonderful.
and I mean, she's power mad. She's power mad from the beginning, is ready to bring everything out. Does not believe half the shit Jessica tells her, like, early on.
Hmm.
Because, like, no, who would believe that someone literally made you do anything? and could make you do anything and
Yeah,
has the
literal
power
literal
to just
mind control. Yeah. Yeah, no, she doesn't believe in it. It is to her and pretty much everyone else's detriment because there are a lot of people that don't believe Jessica as she tells her story. Um, yeah, wonderful stuff. Who next?
uh, this is the hard part because we're now getting down to who do you have on your list still?
I have let's see. I have about eight more characters on my list. Some of them are really minor. Let's do two minor ones at once. I want to talk briefly about Colby Minifer and Kieran Mulcair as Robin and Ruben,
Oh,
the siblings across the hall.
you are
I did want to talk about them. I had them in my notes because I really want to talk about them, and I really love them.
a
Um,
hmm, Holy Benefice performance in particular. So unsettling. Like,
yeah, yeah.
like should have included this in the list of trigger warnings. They're fucking right. Like,
They've gotta be. They've gotta
I
be. They never say outright, but they've gotta be.
there's just the blocking of all of their scenes and just the physical touch is framed in such a way that
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like siblings. It feels like incest.
yeah,
And
yeah. Oh god, it's so fucked up. But also there is this kind of this is another aspect of the show that I really love. There is this weird sort of black comedy to it, in that like there's something funny about these siblings across the hall that are almost definitely fucking, and
Especially because
just
Colby Benefia's Robin is like a hippie
yeah,
almost.
yeah, and she's
Like,
like really protective over her brother, and like thinks that like Jessica's like a threat to him, and like she's going after him for some reason. It's genuinely funny. It is a funny thing. It is a funny aspect of the show.
but
For
uncomfortably. I mean,
it is.
a
It
lot of the
totally
humor of
is.
this show is really uncomfortable, but again, intentionally so.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Totally. They just bring this great sort of comedic edge to it, but also are super important because at one point Ruben dies as a sort of byproduct of Kilgreaves' rampage, and Robin is trying to find him. And her involvement in that sort of like snowballs the into the that sort of a support group that Malcolm has. It's just a great aspect. They start off as something so minor, and like so many things in this show start off so small and just continually get worse and worse and worse as the show goes on.
The
It's
show could be described as snowballs into the worst aspects of oneself. Like,
totally.
everyone's snowballing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wonderful stuff. Actually, we were talking about it briefly already. Let's talk about Luke Cage, the wonderful Mike
Yeah,
Colter,
yeah.
and makes
Interestingly,
makes his Defender Saga debut in this show in a very
yeah,
big role.
very big role, but like like a good supporting character on a television show. There's a good chunk of the middle where he's not there at all.
Yeah, if they hadn't already announced that he was getting his own show, you'd watch this character and be like, "Hey, he should have his own show," because he's just a great character. I love Mike Coulter's performance. He's
He's
up there with Kristen Ritter and Charlie Cox, like I already said, as one of the best Marvel comic book castings for live action. He's
His
amazing.
performance in the first episode in particular is great at helping establish the normalcy. Like,
Mhm.
the first episode, aka Ladies' Night, is an example of a near perfect pilot.
I've seen so many people
Like,
complain about that first episode actually, because
really,
calling it like really slow and hard to get into. I think a lot of people expect the hard hitting psychological shit to punch you in the face immediately, but it's not
you
until the
wait.
end. It's not until the end of that first episode that shit starts to go down. Um,
Really, I
yeah, I've seen a lot of people not like the first episode, which
do
I always
people
found
not
fascinating.
understand how like storytelling works and
I
telling a television show works? Like,
I would assume that's the case. Um,
because because that first episode establishes Jessica, it establishes Luke, it establishes Jerry,
It try to establishes Trish.
establishes Trish.
Hell, even establishes
Oh,
Malcolm in a great little sort of like throwaway role in the first episode, but I think like tells you who Malcolm is early on and why
well,
his change later on
it
is so
is
good.
a great pilot,
hmm
um, because we have an hour to work with. We have to introduce our characters, tell a story with a essentially tell a story with a beginning, middle, and end.
hmm
Um,
Maybe it's that the inciting incident of the show doesn't happen until the very end of the first episode. Like, there's no inciting incident before that. Um,
Possible, but I would argue you need all that buildup, or else the psychological games and the true horror of what this show is doing
Of course, yeah, I
isn't
agree. I agree with
going
that.
to hit
Yeah, yeah.
unless we have an episode of mostly normalcy. Like, you already get a lot of what Jessica's gone through Christian Ritter's performance in that first episode.
Hmm.
You can see immediately who she allows to be close. Like, uh, Krish is the closest person to her. Like, Krish is essentially the closest thing to a best friend that she's got.
Hmm.
Um, then you have Jerry. Then you have Malcolm, and then Luke is there for a reason.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because Luke's involvement in the show starts off with how Jessica would sort of randomly meet anyone in her line of work because she's spying on him for someone else. She finds him with a girl, and he what is it? I forget what it is. Is that the girl is married already and she's meeting up with him?
yeah,
Yeah. And so yeah, so she's spying on him, and they're together, and Luke catches on to that. They start to talk. Eventually, they find out that they both have powers, and they use that for what realistically in the real world two people with superpowers would first do is they just start fucking, just to test it out, see what would happen. A bed
release
break,
the tension.
a bed
These
breaks.
these two people have been wound up tighter than a G-string. So
Yeah, it's yeah. But yeah, God, I love Mike Coulter because like I mentioned before, like his superhero backstory is not part of this. What is important in his backstory that is part of this is that he had a wife at one point, Riva, who is now dead. This has a connection to Jessica because under Kilgrave's influence, Jessica killed Luke Cage's wife previously, and when she finds this out, she decides to keep it from Luke, and it creates this great tension between their characters. Um, Also, importantly, I think Kristen Ritter and Mike Coulter have charisma for fucking days. They are so good off of each other. I could watch them flirting like that all day. It's wonderful. Um, I don't know, because you didn't know much about Luke Cage before this, right?
I had only read his couple of appearances in a couple of Marvel books that we've read.
Mhm.
Uh, I know he's often paired up with Iron Fist as Heroes for Hire. Like, I know that that's a big thing.
Yep.
And I
He's
think in the
also
comics, he and Jessica are married. Maybe.
yeah, they have a kid together in the comics actually. Yeah. Um
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, they're great. They're great together. They're a great couple. They really are. But also, yeah, as we continue with the Defender Saga stuff, Luke and Iron Fist will start to get paired up more. So, but yeah, I just yeah, great character. I really love him. Perfectly sets up his sort of spin-off because we do like I mentioned before, Claire Rosario Dawson's Claire shows up in this show, and they're gonna sort of go off and do a spin-off together. So we'll get more of that later on. But yeah, great stuff. Let's talk about Trish briefly, though. Trish Walker, as played by Rachel Taylor. This is actually I don't know if you know what comic book character this is at all.
No, this is going to be some crazy.
You may not have even heard of her. I don't know if you have Hellcat. Are you aware of Hellcat at all?
I sadly am not.
Okay,
Uh,
she's fairly more obscure. Fair enough.
hey,
Um,
hey, look. It's the weird thing of, despite the MCU being pop culture ever present, I think even before this podcast, I had a deeper working knowledge of DC than Marvel. Um,
mhm. Yeah, yeah, which is weird because DC is often the one that gets accused of only promoting like their three big characters. But no, I think most people are aware of I think the larger DC universe than Marvel characters in a weird way. I don't know how that happened, but I think it did.
oh, I mean, it's probably the DC animated universe. Like,
Yeah, DC also
even
DC also does put a heavy emphasis on the supporting casts of their characters, in addition to those big characters, of course. Whereas Marvel, I don't think you often get exposure for those supporting casts of characters. So I don't know, maybe that's it. Whatever. Anyway, Trish is a great character.
this
I
is
say
great.
that for everyone. I think everyone's a great character in this show.
I mean,
Trish,
Trish is Jessica's sister, the one person Jessica truly cares about.
Mhm.
Um, she is kind of the linchpin for the finale working.
Yeah,
Um, 'Cause, oh god, that finale was
so good. So good. I think important. It is important to talk about Trish alongside another big character in this, which is Will Simpson, played by Will Trevall. Um,
well, okay, interesting. Because here's the thing about Will Simpson. I'm gonna be honest. I, I don't want to call him a weak link, but I think he's the weak link. Like he
Interesting.
is he is the least interesting character in this entire cast.
I mean, if we're talking like of the main characters, I suppose. I think
I would argue he is the least of the main cast of everyone who's like he's credited in the titles. He's the one I honestly I kept forgetting about who
really.
he was and what his
Wow.
deal is.
Oh damn.
Um,
Okay. Wow.
it's kind of
No,
like
I think he's super important. And also I think it it's important to note that Will Ferrell is mostly here in a villainous role. So when I say that, like the things that I always remember most about him are when he's being fucking evil, I really mean it, and he's really fucking good at it. But
he's
also
good at
he's
being an asshole, but like I'm
um
gonna be honest, I don't care. Like
so
I am way more invested in everybody else's deal than this dude. Um, also partially because our main villain is David fucking Tennant.
yeah,
So
yeah. I don't know. I think he also gets like the most brutal kill in the whole show though. With at the I think it's in 1000 Cuts when he kills the police chief guy, like just burning him alive.
that is also true.
I think it's fucking memorable. I remember watching that episode with my mom, and she threw a bag of chips at the screen when that happened.
True.
But yeah, no, it's so Will Simpson is a cop who is at one point possessed by Kilgrave, and he goes after Trish. And after he is freed of Kilgrave's power, him and Trish begin to form a relationship. And at the same time, in sort of hoping to stave off any further attacks or weaknesses found by Kilgrave, he begins taking these pills, and they begin sort of like juicing him up, and he gets really aggressive and starts to fuck with his head. He becomes a minor antagonist in the show, but I think a really effective one for what they're trying to do with Trish as a character.
He is literally here to serve other characters in terms of narrative.
And that's
Like,
fine. Characters can be that. Characters can do that. I'm fine with that.
yeah, it just makes him the boring one, the one I do not care about because I'm like,
That's
no,
fine. Okay, sure, fine. That's if you think that, sure, whatever. And you're right. I mean, yeah, he's there to serve a purpose, but it's not a bad thing.
no, it's not. Um, but yeah, he's just a character I just kept forgetting that he was even here.
Yeah.
Um,
I do also like how he sort of ties into Trish's arc of trying to learn like self-defense uh, after being attacked by him, and also with Jessica's past with Kilgrave. Why that's so important to her. I think that's great. But
yeah.
yeah, I got two more on the list here. Do you want to do Hope or Malcolm?
Let's do Malcolm because
Let's
Malcolm,
do Malcolm. Oh God, Ika Darwell as Malcolm. Oh my God,
I comic relief, I guess.
Comic relief to a point. Like that
Like
that 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 stops eventually, and Malcolm is just an actually great character.
the dude. I'd argue he might be the moral compass of the show.
He totally is.
Like
Even as he continues on in the show, like that is very much his role. Um,
he's the one person actually trying to pick up the pieces
yeah,
because, like, again, his plot is he gets controlled by Kilgrave into spying on Jessica
yeah,
through a mix
he,
of Kilgrave's powers and drugs.
yeah. Well, he starts off in an incredibly funny role. He is the druggie in the hall. He keeps finding himself just inside Jessica's apartment. She has to keep walking him out, and it's funny. It's funny to watch him do that, but also you realize that he is doing that to spy on Jessica for Kilgrave. And when he is eventually broken of that, Malcolm almost becomes hyper aware of what he's been doing and shakes it off really fast and becomes part of this like Kilgrave survivors group. Um, and becomes such a really important character in the show in general. I really love his role from that point. I think Ikadar will bring such a great humanity to the role. It's really good stuff.
He just helps. It helps that he's also someone who gets a happy ending.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
totally.
you need a happy ending for someone because
Yeah,
like so
yeah.
much of this show pausing for motorcycle to pass by and rev its engine really really loud.
It
Someone
didn't pick up at all.
it was really loud.
I didn't
I'm
hear it.
genuinely surprised. uh this is a show that not ever like half the cast is dead by the finale.
Yeah,
um
yeah.
and some of them are grievously injured, and like Jessica may be on the road to recovery. But like Malcolm's the one who easily gets on that road,
Mhm,
arguably because as an addict, like being influenced by Kilgrave almost makes it easier in a paradoxical way to
mhm.
reach out and form that community,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, totally.
to pull himself out.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's fascinating character. I hope he's in season two.
He most definitely
Um,
is. He most definitely is. He is wonderful. Um, yeah, so good. I adore him. Oh, but you did mention that half the cast is dead by the end. I think we got to talk about Hope Schlottman, as played by Erin
eh,
Moriarty.
our inciting incident.
Oh God, this poor woman. Oh my God. So yeah, this is in the context of the show, Kilgrave's first victim since coming back. Um, I I will always remember the first time I watched that last scene of episode one, and just how horrified I was of that. And a lot of that is, of course, Erin Moriarty's wonderful performance because she walks in an elevator with her parents. Next thing you know, you hear the gunshots go off, and it is horrifying, genuinely horrifying to watch. Um, Hope's journey from that point has very small glimmers of hope. It's probably the most depressing part of the show because this woman cannot catch a break, um, right down to her death, which is I think one of the most chilling scenes in the show. With
It's a Her death is chilling. It's also just this terribly necessary. You you can kill him now, Jessica,
Yeah,
because
because
I'm
I'm not in danger anymore. It's oh
and
God.
it's brutal and it's a lot of this show is brutal. And it's also very brutal. I mean, it's also incredibly brutal to its female characters.
Mhm. Well, I mean, and again, trigger warning, but we already mentioned the content warning at the start of the
But
episode. But like Jessica's backstory is not just that in a past life she was possessed by Kilgrave into doing what he wanted. That includes, we already talked about the murder, but also like literal sexual assault is heavily implied. It
no,
definitely
no, it's
happened.
explicit. It is explicitly rape
Yeah. Um.
because just if someone can tell you to do something and you do it, you are not giving consent.
Yeah.
Like that is what this is. And again, I think that's why the female voice is kind of important for making this show work.
Mhm.
Like, were this show run by a man?
I'm sure it could still be a good show, but it certainly I don't think it would hit the same. I really don't.
I I have a feeling visually it would be very different. I feel like we might be having a more conversation about inherent misogyny in the show itself.
Mhm.
Like there's a needle being threaded here because of the female perspective. All the sexual assault and all the rape isn't for
It's
a
not.
moment glamorized,
Yeah, and it's never
even
shown.
accidentally.
It's never shown either, which is also very important. I think it's all it's talked about. It definitely happens, and the importance of this, of talking about that and that being a part of the show, is the effect it has on our characters, not the fact that it even happened. Really, it is. Yeah, I think that's what I at least take from that. Um, it truly is, it just a brilliant way of handling it, and a very tactful way of handling it. It's something that could easily be fumbled in the wrong hands, and yeah, I think the female voice definitely helps that, and also makes the end of the season so fucking cathartic. Smile, motherfucker! It's a great fucking finale. It is it is the connection, first off, between Jessica and Trish that makes that final moment work, and Jessica snapping Kilgrave's neck all the more satisfying to watch. Um, it's a wonderful moment. I think is, I think one of the best ever villain deaths in general in the MCU. And also just a great ending for one of the MCU's best villains. I think like top 5 easily, top 3 maybe. He's so good.
I mean, it also especially helps that the show then takes the time to resolve afterwards. Like,
yeah, it's that death happens well before the end of the
I want to say
finale.
there's like a good 15, maybe even 20 minutes
Yeah.
until until credits roll.
Mhm.
Which again, kind of a lost art in the 8 episode miniseries issue that we have
Oh,
with television
totally.
today,
Oh god, yeah.
because you got to try to force everything into 8 episodes when you let stories breathe, please.
Yeah, I mean, there are totally, let a story be as long as it needs to be. There is a place for 8 episode TV shows, of course. Um,
But so much of TV is now 8 episode TV, and it's like,
yeah. When 8 episodes becomes the standard, I think that's when we start to sort of lose focus on that. But larger conversation for another day, I'm sure. um, but yeah,
possibly even our next bonus, possibly our next bonus
yeah,
episode of what we're covering.
very possibly, very possibly. But oh
Um,
man, I think that covers all of our characters.
that's the characters. Well,
And
there's also
and most of my notes,
there
to
is
be
a
honest.
very brief appearance of Rebecca De Mornay as Trish's mother, um,
Oh yes, yes.
which yeah, great guest. Rebecca De Mornay, one of those character actresses that you kind of forget about until she shows up in something and is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Oh god, yeah, yeah.
Even in some other things when she's not given the best material. Hi, the miniseries version of The Shining. Um,
Oh god, I've seen that once, like a very long time ago, and I have kind of meant to go back to it someday. I don't know. Anyway.
it's I somehow caught it on TV once before not having seen the Kubrick film.
Oh god. Okay, so did you like it not having seen the Kubrick film?
No, I was bored.
Good.
I was bored out
Good.
of my mind.
Oh, I love that. I really love that.
But yeah, Rebecca De Mornay, great character actress. Um, her role here is great. I got a feeling she's gonna come back because just
I'm okay. So here's the thing. So I've seen Jessica Jones season 1 4 times now. Seasons 2 and 3 I've only seen once each. But the season with Jessica Jones season 1 I've seen so many times. First off, because I love it so much, but also because I need to show it to people. I'm constantly showing it to people. I'm like, you need to check this out. Watch this. I will watch it with you. And I obviously I watched it again for this podcast episode because I love it so much. I think it's one of the very best things the MCU ever made. And yeah, I think it's so good. This, of course, I think the first 4 seasons of Defender Saga stuff is the stuff I've seen the most of. So like once we get past Luke Cage season 1, I'll definitely be more. I'll be less knowledgeable, I'll say.
that is stuff you will definitely have to rewatch to
Yeah.
refresh yourself.
Oh yeah. Like back when we did the Daredevil season 1 episode, I didn't rewatch that because I knew it so well. But this is what I do want to rewatch because I don't know, I love it. I think it's a great fucking story. I can watch Jessica Jones any day, despite the fact that it isn't extremely heavy. I think it's a story that I find myself continually invested in and can always get into personally. But, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Rebecca De Mornay has a tiny role in one episode, but is fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Um, and just is great. Again, Rosario Dawson is Claire Temple.
Just
Small
great.
role in technically. Is it the finale or is it the penultimate? I think it's the
I
finale.
is it the penultimate? I can't remember now.
I think it's the finale
I think it's yeah. I think you're right. I think it's the finale.
because the penultimate is ends with the shooting.
Yes. Oh, love it. But yeah, no, yeah, yeah. She's great. She shows up. She's really awesome. Claire was always sort of like the character that was always sort of meant to show up to connect all of the early Defenders saga stuff. She definitely takes a backseat after Defenders itself happens, which is like half of the Marvel Netflix shows. Then after that point, so you know whatever. But I do like the role she has here, and it's mostly there for like setting up her and Luke's early relationship. But yeah, I think that actually covers most of my notes because as we're talking about the characters, all the notes all the stuff I have notes on later on, we kind of talk about naturally as part of those conversations. Like I have here the Alias comic, the whole starting small thing, snowballing, Jessica's backstory, MCU connections, things like that. I think we covered most of those already. I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think there's some interest. I think one of the most fascinating things about the show that we didn't cover entirely is some of the stuff in the middle
Mm,
because it's such a strong opening, strong closing, but there's also a really strong middle. Uh, specifically specifically the episodes. I want to say like 6 to 8, like
mm. Because I think what is it, 8 is the one where they're living in the house together,
yes,
which I think is another wonderful episode. I adore the flashbacks in those, especially. The
six.
flashbacks in that
Well,
one
so
especially.
six is where we get. Six is important because it's sort of turn. It's where we get Luke's backstory and where Mike Coulter leaves the show for a significant period of time. Like
Yeah, yeah.
he is gone, isolating Jessica. Episode 7 has Jessica trying to get into a prison
Hmm.
just so she can try to get Kilgrave caught on camera.
Yeah.
Uh, and then episode 8 has Jessica living with Kilgrave.
Hmm.
And that's where we get it's where we get the most character work. Uh,
It's where we also start. Well, I mean, really, Sin Bin and 1,000 Cuts is where we set it up. But another arc that I think we never touched on was that there's this sort of arc going throughout that Jessica builds up the ability to start to resist Kilgrave's powers, which I think is also just another great commentary from from the female writers of this show. That I think is a really strong aspect of the show that doesn't entirely get explained. I think on like a nerdy comic book logic level, it's like, oh, well, how could she resist his powers? It's like, no, she learned how to do that. She learned it's a mental thing.
it, it
It's a trauma.
it is a representative of her developing character arc.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly.
not
It's
not everything in storytelling.
but
I don't
Jacob,
want to say
what device did she make to prevent herself from being possessed by him? um, no, yeah,
she
it
it,
is.
it is a it is a metaphor for dealing with one's trauma.
Yeah,
But it is and
it's
here's
part
the
of her
thing.
character development.
It is not a subtle metaphor.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah, it doesn't need to be. It shouldn't be. Yeah, incredibly smart stuff. I really love that.
it
Oh
is
man.
it is a very easy to parse metaphor. This show is not very subtext heavy. Much of the commentary is just in the text.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's probably, I mean, it's probably partially why it's so good, and why it's so accessible, and probably partially why it deals with its theme so well, so they can't be misconstrued by potential subtext.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Totally.
uh, especially with the way that it likes to portray the way abusers can pretend to be good.
Oh God, yeah. Well,
specifically
yeah,
in episode 8.
yeah, you especially see that there. Oh my
There
God.
is this tiny moment earliest on in the episode where uh, there's a nosy neighbor that knew Jessica growing up because
Mhm.
she's living in the home, her childhood home, reconstructed obsessively by Kilgrave because the man's obsessed. Uh, and Kilgrave uses his powers on this woman basically to get her to stop being a nosy neighbor and stop laying it on thick. And I think that was one of the most chilling scenes in the entire show. One
Yeah.
that kind of flies under the radar
Oh,
because
totally.
it's like, is he trying to be good? No, he's not trying to be good. He's just trying to get Jessica to sleep with him again.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's another important aspect of it is that like Kilgrave is trying to get her to be with him without using his powers. He's trying to get her to want to be with him. Um, and I think that's another really chilling aspect of the story for me. Is
I mean,
that
a lot of that's because Jessica's the one that got away.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Whereas like anyone else, literally anyone else in her life, like he will willingly just immediately tell them to kill themselves. Which oh god, that's another really chilling bit in Thousand Cuts when he's making his escape from the basement there, and he just tells Trish to shoot herself, and the gun jams. Oh my god, like like she straight up almost fucking dies there. Oh, it's so good.
Also, the literal death of 1,000 cuts. Like,
Oh my
I don't
god,
think we mentioned that. And
so
yeah,
good. Oh my god, fuck. Which just straight up almost kills Jerry, but in the end ends up killing Wendy instead, and ugh, miserable stuff. Oh, these poor people. Although most of them are awful, so I guess I shouldn't feel too bad. I don't know.
I mean,
Life is complicated.
Wendy's kind of the innocent.
Yeah, Wendy's the
Like,
innocent.
she's I don't think Wendy does anything in the series, at least that I can remember, wrong.
No, I don't.
Like,
I don't think so.
I guess trying to get more money out of her rich ex-wife. Like, can you blame her though?
Who she's entirely right for being pissed at. Like,
Like, uh, she's she's the sacrificial lamb, uh,
mhm.
one of many sacrificial lambs. Uh, Especially just the way the pace, kind of like Daredevil season 1, pace of the back half of the season just knows how to ramp up.
Oh god,
Uh,
yeah,
and would have been fascinating to see weekly because this was released all as
yeah. It was.
one block
Yep.
because fairly early in streaming programming. I mean, yeah, we still do get stuff with one episode with
Yeah.
full
I
drops, but
mean, one thing we can actually thank Disney Plus for is for normalizing the weekly release schedule again, even if it is still streaming.
yeah, because it's a serialized format. You're going to want to spread it out,
Mhm.
because binging is, doesn't always let things breathe. And I do think these episodes do find a way to let things breathe. Again, especially in that finale where
Oh
we
yeah,
have the ending. Uh, it is it is just a fascinating show. If you haven't watched it, I'd go
watch
do it.
it, please. I don't know why you're
Uh,
at the end of this conversation and you haven't watched it yet.
Also,
Fucking watch it.
first two episodes are directed by the woman who did Madam Web, and they prove that she's actually a good director. And
It's true. It's true. I've seen Madam Web. Don't watch it.
I haven't
Watch Jessica Jones.
watched Jessica Jones. Um, I feel like Madam Web was one of those films that had so much studio interference that
I
anyone
don't know. A lot of it just seems like it was kind of doomed from the start.
it's possible, but like, it,
I personally can't imagine a world where it was ever actually good.
can you imagine a world where it was competent?
No, not really.
No.
Maybe I don't know. I feel like the charm and appeal of the Sony Spider-Verse movies about random ass Spider-Man supporting characters. Comes from the fact that they kind of are aware of what they are, and Madame Web just isn't aware of what it is. Like even Morbius is kind of aware that it's of what it's doing and what it isn't. So I don't know. That's enough talk about Madame Web. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Shall we close out the episode?
Yeah.
Let's close out the episode. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, or listening, wherever you're listening to us on. I love doing these bonus episodes, even if they are few and far between anymore. I would love to do more, Jacob.
I'm setting myself a goal for the next one to be.
You chose a really long show to watch for the next one, Jacob. And multiple movies.
However, this show isn't serialized.
Well, I guess technically it is, but they're
it isn't serialized in that way. It isn't season story arcs. I have a plan. Shush.
Sure you do, Jacob. Sure you do. All that said, but yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Let's do promotions. Jacob, what do you got going on right now?
I don't know. When is this out?
This is out on October 28th. So
okay. Mainly my blog. Still chugging along, where I am in the middle of watching the Star Trek films and reviewing them. I will have done over this past weekend Search for Spock.
Search for Spock. Search for Spock. It's a movie.
That's it. That is what I am doing right now. Yeah. So that's all I got to promote. Sorry.
Okay.
Follow me on socials too. Yeah, that's what I got. Sorry.
Cool. No, that's fine. That's cool. All good with me. Other things for me. Bloodhound Studios things. Also Star Trek videos, reviews, things. Me and my brother have been watching through the movies as well. We also just put out our video on Search for Spock, so check that out as well. Other things, we also do. What else do we do? Fresh Face One Shots. That's what we do for this podcast. We cover Superman by Joshua Williamson, Wonder Woman by Tom King, Batman the Brave and the Bold by Various, and what else? Batman the Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, and I'm guessing Death in the Family Robin Lives is already out at this point. So, but the last issue for that is probably out. Maybe we did a video on it already. I think we did. Who knows? Check out all those things. We're actually recording something in advance for once. It's nice. Check all that out. Also, Uncanny X-Men by Gail Simone. Also, for Fresh Face Solos, I do X-Men by Jed McKay. I'm catching up on all that. Or I may have already caught up on it all at this point. I don't know. Recording in advance sucks, but it is also really helpful. Other things, RTBD, we have a new episode of that coming up in the near-ish future. Should be sometime in November, late November, somewhere around there. So check that out when that comes out. And I think that about does it.
Oh, we should also say the regular podcast, what we're doing.
Regular podcast. Yeah, we just finished Flash Fall, and we're entering Aquaman Autumn, as I kind of jokingly called it, but now I'm kind of sticking with it. So yeah, we finished Rob Venditti and Van Jensen's Flash recently, and we're going into Jeff Parker's Aquaman next time. We're finishing off the New 52 Aquaman run, going all the way up to the start of the Dan Abnett stuff. So
yeah, the next episode we are literally doing all of Jeff Parker's run in one episode.
Yeah, it's a shorter run, and then we're going to be doing Cullen Bunn's Aquaman in half an episode. So check all that out when that is out, and I think that about does it. So as always, if you want to follow us or if you want to follow us, our link trees will be in the description below. I was going to do the book promotions, but there are no books to promote, so there's that. Also, subscribe to the channel, Bloodhound Studios. Leave a rating and subscribe if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. I think that about does it. So thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, this has been Joey Morgan.
Jacob Licklider.
Goodbye.